Tuesday, everyone. I'm joined with the incomparable Shawn Baker. How's it going today, Shawn?
Hey, David, is going very well. First of all, I want to say thank you for allowing me to be part of this whole process, being part of the Cholesterol Code movie. And as always, I've always been very supportive of what you're doing. I've got a little friend with us. So she's also very excited about saturated fat and cholesterol. She likes it very much. So anyway.
So yes, what we're here to talk about is not just the documentary that's going to be getting a full release soon, but that we have a number of screenings around the country, and actually one that's getting hosted in your neck of the woods over there in Seattle. Which is pretty great. It's going to be Wednesday, March 18th, just a few days after COSI, and it's being held at 7 p.m. at the AMC Factoria 8, and it's hosted by Carol Freeman. You're familiar with Carol, right?
Yeah, I've met her before. Yeah, so I'm actually planning on attending, and hopefully you guys that are in the local area local to Washington, Seattle, so on and so forth will come on out and support this. I think I think it'll be groundbreaking, change a lot of people's minds about things, or at least open people's minds up, because I think that's what it's about. This is about, let's just ask questions. Why not? What's wrong with asking questions and see what shakes out? So, and you have done that, and a lot of things have shooken out, as you know, Dave.
That's definitely true. You saw the original screening, I want to say at COSI last year.
Yeah, it was in Vegas in February, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Correct. And I don't know if you've been keeping track, but there had been some things that happened since then, and that got covered and added to the new edit of the movie. So we actually have a documentary that's up to date with a very interesting additional ending. It's from the last time you saw it.
Yeah, I'm glad you're able to cover that, because obviously, things change, as you know, and so it's good to hear that you've included that. So I'm looking forward, because I haven't seen that part, so I'd be excited to see that one. So it'll be a little bit new for me. So I'm excited to see it.
Overall, would you say that this is a pretty common topic, the discussion of cholesterol, especially with the new guidelines coming in, and there being just a little bit more embracing of, say, animal products, especially for diets that might be more animal based?
Well, I mean, it's always been a concern, as you know, you yourself, when you first went on a very higher fat, low carbohydrate diet, you saw your cholesterol go up, and it's not unique to you. I mean, as you know, there are probably thousands, if not millions of people where that occurs. And I see them all the time within, our practice at Rivero, myself, and my own personal consultations. And so we have a lot of interest in this for sure. And none of us are out here saying we should ignore this, but we should study it and understand it a little better, and understand that there is, there's nuance to this stuff. And I think you've done a good job pointing it out, as have others. But I mean, this is certainly, some of the most cutting edge stuff we've seen on this topic.
Yeah, and nuance is kind of the key word, because I think there's a lot of folks who kind of want to just shape this into exactly one thing or the other. And one thing that I'm proud about with this film is that I think we do a pretty good job of both presenting the research that emerges in the central study that you're already very familiar with, that we cover in the film, but also in covering a number of people and their personal stories of, say, going on a low carb diet, or many of them going on a carnivore diet in order to treat existing illnesses. I know you've been covering this a lot. In fact, you've even had a hand in some of the new emerging research around it. Are there particular things that you've seen emerge recently that deserve a bit more attention with regard to the carnivore diet?
Well, as I've said many, many times, this is a therapeutic tool, and then how you decide to go from there. And there's so many, really, it's more questions that I have, because, for instance, we see that, like in your case and many others, you feel good, everything goes, the reason you start the diet, maybe your inflammatory bowel disease goes into remission, but your cholesterol is high. And so the question becomes to me is that a prerequisite to the healing process? Do you need it to be high for you to maintain those symptoms? I don't know that we know that. If we say I'm going to put you on lipid lowering therapy and normalize your cholesterol, does that somehow negatively impact the potential for healing that disease? I'd love to see that question done. There's so many questions that need to be answered, and yet, we're very reluctant to do so. Or I guess, as you know, the funding is a difficulty for most of us. Not that people want to ask the questions, it's who wants to pony up the money to answer those questions. And so, I think that what we're seeing certainly what I would say, and this is some of the criticisms that a lot of people says, you could get healing on any diet as long as you cut out ultra processed food and don't get fat, then you're going to heal. And that's clearly not the case, because I've seen people that have done all those things, in many cases successfully lost weight, and yet they've still had their autoimmune disease, they still had their depressive symptoms. And so there's something more beyond that. And so there's additional therapy beyond just weight loss and removing, processed food. So I think that's an important concept that people understand. Does everybody need to do it? No, of course not. But for those that do, it's a godsend. And the problem is, for some of those people, their cholesterol goes astronomically high. And that's where these types of questions that you're trying to answer become very useful. And bless you for doing that. And I hope you continue to have success. And, we continue to ask questions. That's what science is about, right? If you can't question the science, then it's not science.
No, that's why I appreciate not just your having a hand in wanting to get these scientific questions answered, but also in contributing your time in your efforts, for example, with the Collaborative Science Conference, or COSI, which we have next month. You're a speaker at that as well. By the way, shout out to everybody who is helping to support that, as it's a charity fundraising event dressed up as a conference. But that's the one way we get these questions answered. It's not good enough for us to just make assumptions based on the data we have, because we just don't have longitudinal imaging studies on people who are metabolically healthy. I wish we would do that more often. And
there's no clinical indication to do that in normal practice. So it's like, oh, I'm feeling good. Let's get a CT angiogram. There's just no reason to do that, right?
Right, but it is kind of a challenge, because a lot of times assumptions are made based on what you do with an unhealthy population, that it can therefore be assumed to be necessary for a healthy one. And that is a big problem when the thing you're trying to treat is unrelated to cholesterol. But in the course of doing that thing that seems to give you a new lease on life with these diets that are emerging now, that along with it comes this one thing that your cholesterol shoots through the roof. And so I think our movie does a fairly good job of addressing this and discussing, in many ways, I want to say it opens up more questions than it answers, in a good way. And I think that that's not a bad thing.
Well, the thing that I think is really important for people, because a lot of people that are going to be watching this film are already sort of kind of bought in. They agree, they're low carb, they're already, and the critics, and they push back on the critics, because the critics will say it's all about how long and how high, how high the ApoB is, how long it is. And then there's other people who say cholesterol doesn't matter, and I'm low carb and I'm protected. And I think that's important to understand that that isn't the right answer either. We have some level of nuance in here. And it's like, how do we figure out who is actually at risk, who's not? What are the things that mitigate that? What are the things that, flip the risk upside down, And so I think that's the important thing to think out of this, is that, and I think you would agree, that you can't just say I'm low carb, cholesterol doesn't matter. I think that's that's sort of naive way of looking at it as well. Would you not agree with that?
I mean, I do genuinely have a fairly deep dive nuance opinion that would take a bit to unpack. Fortunately, I'm going to be having you on for the Feldman protocol shortly after, and then I can give you like my longer answer. But the question is, can LDL be high and it be a bad sign? And I think the answer to that question for me is an unequivocal yes. You can have high LDL for very not great reasons. And then the question is, what steps should be taken past that point? I usually leave that to medical professionals, people like yourself.
Well, I remember when guys, we've known each other almost a decade, Dave, and I remember the first thing you said something. It's why is this biomarker an outlier? Not that it is, but why is that? And that's the question. Often in medicine, we just don't ask why a lot anymore. We know that this is it, and this is what we do about it, rather than, well, why is that occurring? And is that relevant? And, I would agree, and I think you would too. Why it's occurring is very relevant.
That gets to, literally, it gets to the heart of the word cause. Because if the why is not that important, then it's absolutely causal. One of my favorite examples to give as an analogy is the reason why you, as a human, enter a volcano relevant as to the association of the lava and you dying, or the entering a volcano and you dying? Well, the answer is No, it doesn't. But is the reason for why a person enters a hospital relevant to the association between that person entering a hospital and dying? Well, it is. If you're a medical professional, it's less likely that you're going to die, and therefore the reason is relevant towards the cause. And that becomes important for something like cholesterol because, frankly, up until now, when we're studying folks with high levels of cholesterol and seeing that association with cardiovascular disease in particular, it's usually because of some kind of impairment or dysfunction as to both the lipid levels and the outcome of cardiovascular disease. And so until recently, we really didn't have a population that was both metabolically healthy, but didn't have some genetic disposition, some kind of impairment for which they would have high LDL as best as we know, and look to see what that association actually is between those high levels and the outcome of heart disease. And that's what this study is helping us get to the bottom of. It's not going to be the end all be all. It's just the first study. But that said, is it going to provide powerful data? And for those people who don't already know, well, you could watch the movie and find out.
Yeah, it's in the movie. How long is the movie, by the way, Dave? What's the runtime on it now?
I believe it's about an hour and 38 minutes before the credits. I think with the credits, it's something more like 140, an hour and 40 some minutes, maybe an hour 42, something like that.
Okay, and if you're not going to watch it in Seattle, where are some of the other screenings some people might want to see it at?
Actually, it's across the country. There's, you know what? I'm happy they gave me the little map. If you don't mind, I'm going to pull this up real quick.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Okay. Wow.
I don't know how up to date this is, but as you can see, it's all over the United States. And this isn't even the complete map. It's also around the world. There's a number of different showings that are in different places around the world. But this is just, I mean, I'm honestly pretty humbled by this, Shawn.
You need Rapid City, South Dakota. That's the only hole in your map you got, right? That's the farthest away.
You can call up some friends for us on that one. I have this other. I'm going to go ahead and add this to the stage too. These are all the different registered screenings. I mean, it's just incredible. And these are all folks who've signed up. And we just got a few days ago our first sold out. Like we only just now got this going, and we already have in Arizona a screening where they've sold every single seat, and it's now maxed out, and it's for something that's still a month and a half away, which is amazing.
Actually, I noticed you got Whidbey Island, Washington. That's not far from me either. Maybe wonder when that one will be.
Yeah.
There's a little town. There's a little. I'm sure it's playing in. What's a little town there? It's a little artist town. Anyway, it's not far from where I've been there many times. So interesting. And then the COSI are the dates of COSI March. You said what, 14th through the 16th or something like that? 13th through 16th, somewhere there.
13th through the 15th. That's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We do have a special recording going on with Ken Berry on the 12th. That's a special event that people can add as an add-on. That'll also be Feldman Protocol, although we're going to be doing that in front of an audience. But the Citizen Science Foundation, this is a benefit. COSI is a benefit for the Citizen Science Foundation. And of course, I'll do a plug real quick to just mention this entire time, all of the funding that we raise for the Citizen Science Foundation, it heads towards the research with a small margin on just third-party services like credit card processing fees. But we have literally like a 0% admin overhead with regard to our fundraising, because we're taking it straight to the research.
Awesome. And I know you have more research in the pipeline. So I know you've talked about this sort of initial study, but more to come. And that's super exciting. And I'm glad to, just be aware of this and glad it's happening. So good for you.
Yeah, I thank you so much for being so generous with your time. I do want to circle back real quick for anybody watching this right now who wants to host a screening themselves in their own community with their own, you just get your friends, your family coming. It usually takes around anywhere between, say, 40 to 60 people, depending on the price of the ticket and the location. But it's fairly straightforward. All you do is you go to cholesterolcodemovie.com, you click the, sign up to be a host, or you can find an existing screening also at cholesterolcodemovie.com to see if you can jump in. And it's risk free. Basically, everyone registers, and if there's enough people registered, then it tips and becomes an official showing, and that's the only time they charge you. And then at that point, you'll have it. You actually choose the location from a map they provide you. That you choose the time, and it becomes your way of watching the movie with your friends and family and your community at large. It's really kind of exciting, Shawn, because as you know, my story is one of grassroots. It's the only way we were able to get this research done, and now it's going to be the one way that we get this story out.
Absolutely. Yeah. And hopefully, you know, lots of people will get to see it and talk about it and share it. And, you know, it's going to impact, gosh, probably millions of lives. So thanks for doing this, Dave.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me, Shawn. And I look forward to seeing you next month at COSI.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully it'll be warmer.
True. It's usually warmer here.